Tonight, we go inside the mountainside bunker of an accused killer. Police say Peter Keller worked on this elaborate hideout for years.
The chilling video diary shows Peter Keller calmly plotting to kill his wife Lynette and 18-year-old daughter Kayleen, and to live in a bunker in the woods in Washington state.
An underground fortified bunker, totally camouflaged in a heavily wooded area.
On April 22nd, 2012, one man's actions would spark one of the most infamous weeks in Snoqualmie Valley's recent memory. The story begins in a house near North Bend, in which he killed his entire family, and it ends on Rattlesnake Ridge in a gigantic, complex underground bunker. This man's name is echoed throughout the valley to this day. His name is Peter Keller. In order to fully explain the story, I needed more than just a couple of news articles though. I needed someone who was tied to the case extensively. I came into contact with Sheriff Mike Mellis of the King County Sheriff's Department. He was part of the team that worked extensively on the scene of the crime. He was able to give me the full story of what happened that fateful week. It began with a 911 call that was made to a house fire in the Edgewick area of North Bend.
Fire department arrived. It was a one-story house on the far east side of North Bend. The fire wasn't really going very well. It was a very smoky fire. They put it out right away, did a sweep for security and safety inside the building, and they found two people there, an adult woman and a teenager or a young woman.
They found two dead bodies, Kayleen Keller, 18 years old, and Lynette Keller, 41. Both were found with gunshot wounds. After this revelation, Mike Mellis' team started the investigation of the deaths of the two right away. A little bit into the investigation, they obviously noticed that Peter Keller was missing from the scene.
But we employed some of the basic stuff, cell phone tracking, trying to figure out which cell phone towers he'd been connecting to. His cell records didn't give us really any great clue, and there's not that many cell towers around here, believe it or not. So you get broad areas where he might be, but nothing real specific.
While Mike and his team were trying to examine the cell records, however, some new evidence had come up back at the house.
The fire was purposely set. It was an arson. Gasoline was used in the kitchen on top of a stove, and it was quite an elaborate setup, but it failed. The arsonist failed to open the windows, so depriving the fire of oxygen. So it flared up pretty big, really fast, but then died out and just was a smoky mess for a long time. So it didn't destroy the house like it had been intended.
In the house was a safe containing multiple items, including computer hard drives. A computer forensics team were able to crack open the hard drives and then examine the files to try and uncover more indications to the murders. Then, they hit the jackpot.
Our forensics team says, hey, we cracked the hard drives and we're looking at things, and they'd be sending out photos. And we had heard about this potential bunker or campsite that he'd kept, but it was really just a rumor at that point. But then we started getting photos in. We discovered that this was not just a little campsite, ground cleared with a campfire. This was a very elaborate wooden bunker built into a steep hillside somewhere in the wilderness.
The bunker accommodated everything from a power generator to a miniature sewage system, colossal amounts of food and drinks, and much more. The evidence had become clear. If investigators wanted to locate Peter Keller, this was the spot to locate him. But there's just one problem. Investigators will have to find this bunker across thousands of acres through deep forests and hillsides spanning the valley.
Forensic video analysis is one of my training ancillary duties at work. So I looked at this series of photos, and there was many of them, but there was really one series in particular dated, it was a couple of years before this incident, and it was a panorama attempt. So it was a man standing with the camera, and then he would shoot several pictures in a 360-degree manner. So we had those 4 or 5 or 6 pictures that represented one 360 view. There was methods through Photoshop that we could eliminate colors, eliminate tree branches, using Photoshop masking layers. And then as you manipulated the photo more, we ended up with a a color that we were able to adjust its saturation level. There was a particular spacing of each of these brown objects, and they were just blobs, more or less. Being a local resident here, my first thought after we found those things in the photograph was, man, that looks like the same color bricks as the mall over here in North Bend.
With the new general location of the bunker, the team tried to use geometry techniques in order to calculate the precise angle at which the building was being viewed at. The investigators determined through examining the photos that this section of woods, just outside exit 31 on I-90 in North Bend, was the only location that capturing these shots would be possible.
And if you're ever standing at the outlet mall, just stand there and look due south, and you'll see that large hillside, and that's where we're talking about.
At the end of the week, the SWAT team were called in.
The teams organized themselves to come down the hillside looking for any sign of life or movement. We figured that he had camouflaged himself very well, which in fact he did.
While heading down the ridgeline, the SWAT team ran into a stench that smelled awfully like smoke. The group slowly and carefully followed the smoke to attempt to locate the origin of it.
At some point they made announcements, "Peter Keller, come out, we know you're there."
The standoff had begun. The SWAT team ordered Peter to immediately give himself up and exit the bunker. After over a day of trying to get Peter out of the bunker, the SWAT team knew Peter wouldn't come out.
Once he discovered that he was surrounded by the cops, he took his own life with one of his handguns right there in the bunker.
When officials kept digging through the bunker, they came across something even more sinister. Peter had made a video diary sometime before the murder. He directly describes his plan of killing his family right into the camera.
I may get caught right away. Basically, if I get caught, I'm just going to shoot myself. So, I mean, I could basically be dead in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I don't know. It's all up to chance at this point. So,
I had one question though after hearing Mike's story. Why would he commit such an evil act of violence like this?
Self-centered greed. I mean, he says it right there. I'm glad the guy left his video diary because it really shows everybody what a self-centered guy he was.
It could only be perceived on what Peter would have done if he got away from the murder. Maybe he would have ended up regretting his decision and would kill himself anyways. Maybe he would have gone on to live until he died of age, away from civilization, never to be found again. But one thing is for sure, Peter's legacy is still echoed through the valley today. The remembrance of his actions will always remain in the minds of many across the valley,